Now we're going to take a look at creating a track using the step sequencer. It's ideal for creating repeating patterns and therefore lends itself naturally to drums and drum maps. First, I'm going to insert studio drums into the project by dragging it from the instrument browser into the track view. I'm going to use the option of a separate MIDI and audio track, which will allow me to demonstrate the routing of drum maps a little better. Once that's loaded, we'll have a quick click around the kit to make sure all is working okay. Normally, the routing's already set up for us as it is here, and the MIDI output's assigned to the studio instrument drums, which, as we now know, processes the MIDI data from the track and generates drum sounds. In this example, however, we're going to take a closer look at drum maps. First, I'm going to assign the MIDI track output to a drum map, and as you can see, there are already plenty of drum maps to choose from. I'm going to choose the Drum Map Manager though. I mentioned drum maps earlier when we looked at the preferences pages, and they are virtual outputs for MIDI instruments. Rather than take the MIDI data and process it like a drum synth, the drum map reassigns the incoming data to synths of our choosing, also changing the note mapping if required. The Drum Map Manager is where these assignments are made. We now have open a blank drum map, and if we want, it's possible to build a map from scratch by first creating a new map and then using the Add Row button and making the necessary assignments. There are also all the presets to choose from though, and I'm going to open a basic general MIDI map to explain how they work. Although there are several lines in each map, they all do the same thing, just for different notes. So we'll take a look at one of these rows to see what's happening. Here at the bottom, we have the kick drum mapping. The in note tells the map which note to respond to. This is note 36, which is the general MIDI standard for a kick drum. The out note is the note sent from the drum map. On many maps, such as this one, it's exactly the same as the in note, but it can be any note. Think of this as a translator. The drum map receives note 36 as the incoming note, and then instructs the synth which note to actually play. In this case, it's also note 36, but as I said, can be changed to any note. The name field can be changed to suit and is there to make drum recognition easier. The channel can also be changed, but channel 10 is the traditional channel used for drums, and we'll leave it on that. The out port is the synth that will actually play the note. In this map, they are all the same, but if I want to use the kick drum from a different synth, I just need to change the output. I can map the kick, for example, to one of my external drum machines. This is one of the real strengths of drum maps. It makes creating drum kits from more than one drum synth easy and transparent. Velocity and velocity scale are there just to adjust velocity as required. The port channel section at the bottom is where the bank and patches for any synths assigned in the map can be changed. Any ports chosen in the output will show here. Now that's all set up, the new drum map appears as a virtual output in the MIDI output drop-down. I'm going to choose that as our track output, and then I'm going to open the step sequencer ready to program our drum line. The step sequencer is open by selecting it from the Views menu or pressing Alt+4 with the track selected. Like many of the other views, this also has its own menu. Rows for inserting, deleting and other row-related functions, including filling a row in regular steps. The pattern menu allows us to save, load and clear patterns, while the options menu allows adjustments of various sequencer settings. The icons and data entry boxes beneath adjust the number of beats and steps per pattern, as well as playback control and position. Each lane in the main display area represents an individual note on the assigned synth and is split into two panes. The left pane shows the rows of note names, and to the right is the note pane that shows the steps as set in the beats and pattern fields. The notes will show as drum names if the track's assigned to a drum map, as it is here, and there are also mute and solo buttons for each row. Click on the drum name to sound the currently assigned drum. Click on the arrow to the left of that to open up the row and expose more controls. The right-hand pane now shows a controller pane where data for the currently selected controller is displayed and can be edited. We'll look at this shortly. The current output and channel number are displayed just beneath the note or drum name, and they can be changed by double-clicking on them. Now let's look at setting up a pattern. First, I'm going to increase the number of steps to 8, then use the menu to insert a pedal hat every 2 steps. Click on the play button to start the step sequencer playback. You'll notice that this has a very unnatural robotic sound. We'll change that using the controller pane and velocity. I'll open up the hi-hat row and make sure that velocity is the selected controller. You can see the velocity settings displayed as columns in the controller pane. Just click and drag to adjust those levels. I'll leave an accent on each beat. Now that sounds much better. To add notes, just left click on a step in the note pane. To delete, right click on it. Flams can be added by double clicking. In addition to the velocity controller, there are knobs for velocity, duration, swing, time and flam. These differ to the controllers selected from the drop-down menu, as these all affect the whole row and not individual notes. There are further controllers available from the drop-down menu, and they are adjusted in a similar way to the velocity parameter. Velocity, time, offset and step play probability are ever present. Other controllers will depend on the assigned synth. The step play probability settings adjust the likelihood of a step playing on each loop of the pattern. At its lowest, it never plays, and the higher this setting, the more likely it is to play on every pass, until at its very highest setting, the step is played every time. This can be useful, for example, on intricate hi-hat lines. Once a pattern has been created, a clip is placed in the track view. This clip can be dragged out to the required length. And that's how we create a drum pattern using a step sequencer.